Awesome. All right, guys. Today I'm joined by Jacie, Lady Carnivore on Instagram, and she's got a whole bunch of awesome content. And today we're going to chat about our carnivore journeys, her carnivore journey, and how she got into it and why, and also kind of how that pertains to mental health, because that's a big part of the story as well. So Jacie, awesome to have you on. Thanks so much. And we can dive into your intro, into your story.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me on. I'm always grateful for the opportunity to share my story. I know that listening to a lot of media about carnivore when I first got started was super helpful for me making the decision to go carnivore. So I'm glad that you have created this platform for people to share their stories.
Yeah, no, and I'm the exact same way. I was a big consumer, and now hoping to not add to the noise, but just answer some of those other questions, and just hearing other people's experiences is so affirming. So that's awesome.
Yeah, awesome. So kind of how I got into carnivore, to take it way back, just to talk about how I ate growing up. Pretty standard American diet. As I got older, I always really liked animals. And so everyone always kind of told me, like, you should be a vegetarian, or why aren't you vegetarian? And so it just felt like the natural progression of what I was supposed to do. I think the media too has been pushing plant-based for a while now. And so it just seemed like the natural choice for me to become a vegetarian. At the time I went vegetarian, I was in high school. I had recently been diagnosed with OCD, and I was in the midst of an eating disorder. So while I don't think vegetarianism itself is an eating disorder, it definitely contributed to mine personally. I was someone who was looking for another way to restrict food and kind of have that excuse for social occasions. And so it was really easy to say, oh, I can't have that, I'm a vegetarian. Eventually, I got support for my eating disorders, and I was able to end those, and kind of with that ended my vegetarianism, and then just went back to standard American diet. I kind of tried a little bit of everything. I did calories in, calories out, if it fits your macros. I tried low fat. And then eventually I had a coworker who, she was like, I'm trying this new diet. It's called keto. And she explained to me that it's a high fat diet. And I was like, girl, you are going to kill yourself. So me being the just incredibly large nerd that I am, I went on PubMed and I looked up a bunch of different articles and found that I was wrong. And that keto was probably a really good choice for me specifically because I have scoliosis and everything hip down kind of hurts, all my joints. And I found that keto was really great for inflammation specifically. So I decided to try keto. And it worked really well for me. I lost a bunch of weight. I had reduced muscle fog, reduced joint inflammation. I didn't notice any impact on my OCD whatsoever, just like less brain fog, but it didn't impact my anxiety disorders at all. So I did keto for a while. I found it really hard to stick to because it's so binary, right? Either you're in ketosis or you're not. So anytime I went over my carb limit, I was just like, well, screw it. I'm just going to eat all the carbs. And so I just yo-yoed for, I think it was like 3 years. I was just back and forth on and off of keto. And then I heard another coworker mentioned Joe Rogan to me. And it just so happened I heard the Joe Rogan, Sean Baker podcast first. And I was like, what the heck? This seems like an easier way to do keto. So that's how I was introduced to the carnivore diet, was through Sean Baker. And I just thought it was an easier keto diet. So I committed to doing 30 days of it in January of 2020. And I'm now 600 days into my 30-day commitment. The benefits I've experienced on carnivore have just been so immense that, like, people ask me, like, is there a difference between keto and carnivore? And I'm like, 1,000,000% yes. It's not just reduced brain fog. I have completely eliminated my OCD behaviors. Not only have I eliminated the behaviors, I just no longer have the persistent thoughts that I used to. The joint inflammation is completely gone. I actually was diagnosed with pre-diabetes, and that's gone. All like I get my blood work checked regularly at a doctor, etc. And yeah, it's night and day difference. It's been incredible for me. And I mean, now my goal is just to tell more people this is an option. Like, I wish at some point in all of the years of being medicated, going to therapy for, and the actual physical trauma side effects of my OCD behaviors, I wish someone had said, like, hey, have you thought about nutrition?
Mm-hmm.
And never once, never once. So for me, it's just that's where my passion for sharing my story comes from is I just want people to know it's an option. And no, I don't think that everyone needs to do carnivore, or I don't even know if carnivore is best for everyone. What I do know is it's best for me, and that I wish someone had mentioned it to me years ago.
Yeah. No, I can relate to a lot of that and a lot of what you said. And I think it's funny because I would say that I don't know if nutrition was recommended as like a legitimate approach, but it was, sometimes people kind of throw it out as like well, it's one good thing to do. Like, are you eating healthy? And you kind of roll your eyes and you're like, well, like, yeah, I'm trying, but like, that's not going to help. That's not going to solve the problem. So I sometimes wonder for myself if I would have listened earlier. And then the funny thing is I had a similar experience to you. I heard about keto from a friend um, at a time when I was really looking for kind of like things to help my mood and solutions for that, which once again, like, yeah, you know, talk therapy is great for a lot of things and there's a lot of good strategies there, but to really like feel better, um,
Mm,
I was just kind of exploring and someone made that connection for me, a friend, and said, this helped with this helps with my PTSD. And I thought, well, that's kind of weird. Like that must be different than just like, oh, like, you'll feel a little better if you eat healthier. That seems like a powerful change. So I got into keto and started exploring that. But yeah, I definitely want to get into just a little bit of um well the differences you saw from keto to carnivore, because some people do see big differences just on keto even with the mental health, but other people, carnivore seems to be like that other piece of the puzzle. And I know, I mean, I'm still kind of tweaking and figuring this out. I've been on kind of like you, actually. I did keto probably for like 3 years, like seeing enough benefit that I would keep coming back to it, but then also kind of like one foot in, one foot out. And then I actually sort of did that with carnivore for a little bit because I heard about it, heard the stories, would do it, would feel better. And then it was almost like I just wasn't committed enough. I was like, I would start to feel better. I'd be like, well, I could go back to it if I need to. So I kind of,
mm.
I don't know, took my time, I guess, but I've been fairly, I mean, I guess strict since the new year pretty well. And it's just continued to get better for me. But yeah, what were those um changes like? Were you expecting it to kind of help the OCD or the anxiety stuff, or when you transitioned over, how did that kind of look and feel?
Yeah. So when I started carnivore, it was purely for weight loss. Like, I
Okay.
will be the vainest person right now and just say it was purely for weight loss. I had had good weight loss on keto. And so I wanted to experience that again because with the yo-yoing back and forth, I had just kind of really wrecked whatever progress I had made.
Hmm.
And so for me, going into carnivore, it was really just, I thought of it as a keto reset and a good way to kind of kickstart keto. I wasn't even expecting weight loss benefits from carnivore. I just thought it would help me get back into a keto way of eating. And then I quickly found the differences for me were tremendous. I know a lot of people have kind of a transition period when they're going into carnivore and they have like GI distress and stuff. I've always joked that my stomach is an actual garbage disposal. Like, I can process anything, no problem. So I didn't have any issues with transitioning into carnivore. So I just started feeling immediate benefits. It like first week, 10 pounds down, which is not fat loss, it's water weight and
Hmm.
inflammation leaving the body. But it was still so incredible to see that big of a change in such a short period of time. And then pretty immediately reduced brain fog, reduced joint inflammation, the stuff I was used to on keto. as I was approaching the 30 days and I was kind of thinking about how I wanted to transition out of carnivore and get into keto, I just had this realization that I I can explain my OCD in only terms that I can understand. I don't have any clinical training or anything.
Mhm.
But essentially, it's like I had a toddler, an evil toddler in my brain just nagging me all the time. It was like Chucky in my brain, bringing up worst case scenarios just constantly. So I don't know how graphic you want me to get.
Well, I heard some of your examples in the carnivore cast episode, and even about just the, yeah, I mean, the double check, like the double checking things, but then even like I think the hand washing and that type of thing too, right?
So to my two biggest symptoms that I think people can relate to was door checking. So I would have
Yeah.
to check that the door was locked multiple times. So I would be leaving my house and, lock the door like normal, check that it's locked, walk to my car. And then I would have this nagging, persistent thought of, well, is that door actually locked? And I would go back and check 50 plus times. And at that point, it's like I was a slave to it. I couldn't stop. I know everyone thinks, well, why don't you just stop and leave? Obviously, the
Yeah.
door is locked. You just checked, and you literally can't.
Yeah.
It wasn't a choice for me. It was something I had to do. It was the obsessive compulsive disorder. But the other thing that I would do is I would have like medical fear over moles on my body.
Mm.
And so I would remove them myself. And multiple times I've had to go to my primary care physician or urgent care to have those like mole removal attempts of
Mhm.
my own stitched up. And so towards the end of the 30 days, I realized I hadn't checked the door in a week. And I realized that the moles that would normally like give me persistent negative thoughts didn't bother me anymore. And I just realized this is night and day difference from keto. Like I'm
Mhm.
not having those behaviors anymore. It's not like they were alleviated. It's like they were starting to leave. I It's so hard to explain, but it's like the obsessive compulsive disorder was my entire mind before, and I could feel it was growing smaller.
Mhm.
Like that part of my mind was just growing smaller. And now I don't have any OCD behaviors. I don't have any persistent nagging thoughts. To your point about like thinking you could go off keto and go back to it when you need it, or going off carnivore and going back to it when you need it. I fell off the wagon so hard in April of 2020.
Mm.
So was carnivore consistently for about 4 months and then fell off the wagon. And immediately my OCD behaviors came back. The persistent thoughts came back. And I just realized, like, now that I had experienced the other side, I couldn't tolerate that in my life anymore. I was like, this is not worth it to me. Potato chips, ice
Yeah.
cream, not worth it to me. Give me the meat, give me the mental clarity, give me my brain back, give me my life back, because I didn't have to check doors. I wasn't a slave to giving myself 30 extra minutes so I could leave my house, or not even leaving my house at all, because it would just give me so much anxiety. I'd be like, well, screw
Yeah.
it, I'm not going to leave. So it was just, for me, it was incredible. And I know a lot of people experience benefits with keto, but I would even encourage those people who are getting benefits on keto, like, why not give carnivore a shot? It might be a totally different experience.
Yeah. No, totally. And that's like, it's such an awesome story and transformation. And I can relate. I was never diagnosed per se with OCD. And I don't think my kind of manifestations of it did not rise to the same level that it was like the actual kind of living out the compulsions. But when I was younger, that was the case with kind of hand washing and checking. And I didn't really know what it was at the time. And it wasn't ever like, this is like so much out of the way that like someone would be like, that's really weird. But it was kind of like people would be like, why are you doing that again, kind of thing. And I'd be like, yeah, I don't really know. I just think I need to. So I kind of look back and I think I could have like gotten a diagnosis if I'd kind of pushed for it, but it wasn't enough that it was like super, super obvious. And then the other thing I kind of wanted to get into a little bit, and it's really neat because you talk about it's not just like this sort of helped it and now you can manage it better. It kind of really, you talk about like that shrinking down, that voice, that like that compulsion, which, yeah, I don't think unless you experience it, you can really explain how strong like that, the compelling nature of, if you don't do this, something's going to happen. And it's really not like, even if someone else explains it out to you, it's almost like worse for me anyways. It was almost worse than the situation that they would explain. So I'd be like, I agree with you that that's not that bad, but that does not compute with what I'm experiencing. So there must be something else bad. I don't know if that makes sense to you, but it's yeah, unless you kind of experience that, it's hard to understand. But yeah, so what I was kind of saying was, in my experience, the kind of, I guess, as I got older, it was more like just the way I thought as opposed to actually kind of carrying out the compulsion. So more like obsessive thinking and that type of thing, which has been really helped by carnivore. But I kind of wonder, in your scenario, you're saying that kind of, even that stuff kind of faded away with carnivore. So it's not even so much that, yeah, it's just more manageable. It's like it's gone, which is pretty crazy.
Yeah. To your point, it feels like life or death. Like, and it's infuriating because I would be in that moment and I would be checking the door and I would realize logically, this doesn't make sense. I've checked the door 50 times. It's freaking locked. But it feels like life or death. Like, if I do not check the door, I will die. Someone I love will die. And so it doesn't feel like an option because it's life or death. And I don't, it's so hard to explain to people because I completely agree. As a logical person, it doesn't make any sense.
Mhm.
And logically, you should be able to overcome that. And that was a lot of what behavior therapy was for me. Basically, behavior therapy for OCD is you need to learn to be comfortable with being uncomfortable.
Yeah.
So essentially, they're telling you, you need to learn how to live like this.
Uh-huh.
So it's not treating the OCD whatsoever. It's just managing the symptoms of it and making you less of an inconvenience to society.
Mhm.
I also did antipsychotics, antidepressants, and SSRIs, all of which come with a huge slew of side effects that are like just awful.
Mhm.
They're horrifying. There were some that I would rather have been dead than
Wow.
have to have continued taking them.
Wow.
And so I always thought I was very lucky that I could make the choice to live with my anxiety disorder rather than have to live on the whatever medication they had prescribed me of the week.
Yeah.
And it's incredible to me too, because none of them, again, treat the actual OCD. It's just trying to manage the symptoms. And you feel like half alive person, like a zombie walking around. And
Mhm.
then you have to choose, like, do I want to experience these like life or death feelings, or do I want to feel like a zombie who still experiences these
Mhm.
life or death compulsions, but just a little less?
Yeah.
Like, that's a hard choice to make. And so, like I said, I just wish someone had brought it up to me sooner. Um, I don't remember nutrition ever being a conversation, even in terms of like, you should eat lean meats and vegetables. Like, I don't even
Really?
remember having that conversation.
Yeah. Wow. I mean, it's incredible sometimes, looking at, I mean, everyone just has their own experience with looking at like the kind of conventional path for some of these things like OCD, like depression, whatever it is. There's not like a, like you've got to do a lot of your own research. Like there's not a ton of paths that are out there. Like I'm always kind of frustrated when I hear people talk about like, oh, so and so needs to get help, like in quotation marks, like it's some like thing you can just go like get and then you're good. But it's like, even if you go, like you said, to the behavioral therapist or the medications, like that is just the beginning of a journey, and it might not even be the right journey. Like it might not be helping you. It's like they are the professionals and it is the help in quotation marks, but um the really sad thing is it's not the solution for a lot of people. And I kind of personally believe now that it's not it's not really a full solution ever. There are tools there maybe, but it's not going to be a full solution. So yeah, I mean, just people hearing about this sooner is obviously a big part of just the conversation, but no, that's amazing. So you do carnivore, it goes away, like you said, it's night and day, and then you had that falling off experience, which brings back the symptoms, and I can relate to that too. And since I've kind of just been experimenting with some different things as far as carnivore goes, so I did like basically strict carnivore, like I didn't deviate from it, and for me that meant even like kind of limiting dairy, trying not to lean into like the carnivore like treats too much. But then I kind of like you said about going from keto to carnivore, to see what that next step might be. I've been doing that with the, what Michaela calls like the lion diet, with just the ruminant meat, simply for an experiment, because I felt like maybe I can push this farther. And I actually found an improvement there. I found kind of a next level there, which was really, really interesting. But then more recently, I had an experience where I brought some whiskey back. I had like a good friend get married and this stuff, and I hadn't been drinking. And I kind of brought the just some drinking back, like clean kind of bourbon and that type of thing. And obviously you're more susceptible to alcohol when you're on a lower zero carb diet. So, and I knew that, but I kind of pushed it a little bit. And that experience of even just being hungover that one day, maybe I didn't fall off the train in terms of like the eating, but even that like mental place that it can take you back to, it just reminds you of why you're doing what you're doing, and you can see that progress that you've made. So that's neat to hear about. But yeah, going back to what you do, what kind of, I mean, even carnivore now, there's like these different spectrums. There's like high fat, high protein lion diet. There's like keto carnivore. So like, what did you start out with? How has that evolved? And like, do you think, how much does that play into your kind of reasons for doing it, like your mental health? Because even just from some of the stuff I've started talking about, so many people, it seems like, have even already found carnivore, but then they're still like, I don't know if this works for me, or like, I'm not there yet. And what am I doing wrong? Or what do I need to do? And obviously everybody's different. I think that's pretty important to realize. So everyone's solution will be different, but yeah, just curious for your experience with that, how you started out and how that's kind of evolved for you.
Yeah, I find this very interesting. I do carnivore coaching, and so part of that is really trying to explore all those different, I call them levers, right?
Mhm.
So there's carnivore, which is eating animal based, and then there are all of these levers you can play with. And I think that's really cool. And I think there's a huge benefit to using carnivore as a true elimination diet and doing the lion diet for at least a period of time. It'll
Mhm.
give you a baseline
Mhm.
to figure out what other levers, when you pull them, how does it affect that baseline? When I started carnivore, I started by eating the meat that I craved when I craved it. I ended up eating a ton of salmon, which was super fascinating because I think there's this narrative in carnivore that beef is best.
Yeah.
And I'm not arguing with that at all. But for me personally, I am a person who holds on to ferritin and iron very easily. And so I think what was happening was my body was craving salmon because it was like, whoa, slow down on the iron, lady. And so I think our bodies are these incredible biofeedback mechanisms, and we should listen to them to a certain
Mhm.
extent. Obviously, if they're craving a carb, they're lying. But beyond that, so I truly recommend, especially when people are transitioning into carnivore, it's the easiest way to transition. Eating the meat you crave when you crave it, and even having like quote unquote dirty carnivore foods like sausages,
Mhm.
like whatever can make it palatable for your transition, I think is a huge benefit. And then, like I said, eventually doing the elimination phase, I think is super great. My carnivore diet has changed a lot since the beginning. So originally I was eating the meat that I craved when I craved it. a lot of salmon. I was eating a lot of sausages. And then just over time, I noticed that my diet kind of naturally cleaned itself up. I stopped using condiments. So I was using mustard and hot sauce for the longest time.
Yeah.
I've always joked that capsaicin and caffeine are the two plant toxins I can't quit.
Is that the one in
And
mustard? Is that what's the
cap
yeah, what's that?
capsaicin is spice. So it's
Oh, spice. Okay.
whatever like hot
Yeah.
is. So it's typically in peppers. And I eventually just found myself gravitating more and more to just salting my meat, and just having, ground beef or chicken, and not necessarily the sausages and bacon that I was having originally. And then I made this huge goal to compete in a bikini competition
Right.
in July. And so that changed my diet a lot too, because it added in this element of very intentional, specific, goal-oriented fat loss on carnivore, which I'm so glad I spent 10 months healing my hormones before jumping on that wagon.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's a huge piece a lot of people are missing when they start carnivore for weight loss, and they're distraught because they gain weight or they just feel like they're not losing as quickly as they should be. All I have to say to them is like, your body is healing. Like, if you're like me, you fed your body trash for however many years of your life, and your body is rebuilding, your hormones are rebuilding. So I do think there's a certain amount of healing you have to go through before you can successfully achieve the weight loss portion of carnivore, if that is a goal for you. And so I've kind of done it all. I definitely try and at least explore all those different levers, if not only for myself, for my clients who I'm coaching, to see what might work for who. And I find it a lot of fun. It's kind of the spice of carnivore. That said, my recent kick has been getting more variety in, because I think there's a lot at play there. And I kind of agree with standard American diet. You know how they say to eat a lot of different fruits and vegetables, like eat the rainbow?
Mm-hmm.
It's because they're trying to make sure you get all the vitamins and minerals. So meat naturally has more vitamins and minerals than vegetables. They're more bioavailable. But I think when we eliminate whole types of animal, you might be eliminating a vitamin or mineral that you need. For example, iodine is plentiful in eggs and fish, but it is very lacking in red meats. So if you go total lion diet for a long period of time, you may notice that your thyroid function starts slipping, and it could be because of that iodine. Now, that's certainly something you could supplement, but if you could eat eggs or fish versus taking a supplement, I think that's why a lot of us went to carnivore in the first place, is because it is a nutritionally viable diet.
Mm-hmm.
So that's been kind of my more recent kick, and something I've been concentrating on with my clients is like trying to find those gaps in their diet and fill it up with different types of animal meats.
Yeah, I love that. And I think it's so worth exploring. And it's so funny because you come to this originally, and I think a lot of people are definitely thinking, how could I manage this for even 30 days, this restrictive diet? And then as you start to kind of, well, get used to it, adjust, but then kind of play around with it, depending on your goals, then you start to realize like, wow, even though like we've narrowed it down to animal products, like there's still so many ways, there's so many things to eat. And I'll definitely attach your Instagram, because you do some awesome stuff too, and some different dishes. And yeah, there's just so many ways of doing it with the meat, the fish, with eggs. So it's pretty incredible. But I love that idea of I mean, it's kind of like, what are your goals? It's also about, I think you got to put healing first, and then work from there. And then even, it's funny because I hear some things that I heard on podcasts, like when I was earlier in my journey, that I hear again, but it rings truer when you've done it for a while. Like even that idea of, I mean, yeah, once you've gotten rid of the, the kind of toxic cravings, listening to your body is such an important tool, whether that's like more fat or more protein, or it's like, maybe you do need a bit of dairy, like maybe that's going to help you out, or eggs, fish, like you mentioned, the salmon. So I think that's just something to be mindful of. I definitely recommend, like, I think as well, like doing the elimination at some point, and that's kind of the experiment that I've been doing. And I'm kind of at the point where it's funny because I mentioned it in the one video I did, but when about a month in when I first started it, I felt like a lot better. And I would say my main motivation is kind of the mood, like sort of depression factor that I've been trying to utilize carnivore for, and it's been a huge improvement overall. But yeah, for the first month of kind of the lion diet, I was kind of having these almost like highs, which was very like interesting. And then it kind of leveled out, and then it's kind of been more, I would say I kind of describe it now as like stable progression, but not those kind of those highs. But it's kind of neat to think, okay, you know, what does that mean? Or, you know, when is it time to experiment versus, I think sometimes you can like chase something with almost like a perfectionist mindset. Like this is something I've seen in the more strict groups where people, they assume that being stricter will get them a better result when, like, I don't know if that's always the case. So I'm sure maybe you see that in some of your clients where it's like, yeah, give it a try, but also like don't be
Mm.
perfectionistic or dogmatic. And I like, that was another thing I liked about your content was, you know, almost stressing that fact of like, don't be too dogmatic about this because that could kind of ruin it. So
Yeah, definitely. I actually have a really great example. Someone reached out to me. They're like, my eye keeps twitching and I'm getting a lot of muscle cramping. And I've been doing carnivore for about 60 days now. And I was like, are you eating dairy? And they said, no, I want to do carnivore correctly. So I'm not eating dairy. And I was
right.
like, okay, well, that sounds like a calcium deficiency to me. So you might want to consider adding in dairy. So I just think that like at some point you have to choose the hill you want to die on.
Right.
I would rather see everyone have the perfect carnivore diet for them than see everyone doing the same quote unquote perfect carnivore diet. We all have different health histories, we all have different goals. We're all unique little snowflakes. So the carnivore diet that works for me may not work for you, and that's okay.
Mhm. Yeah, no, I totally agree. And I mean, it's just, yeah, it's funny how fast we can take something and start to make like rules. But like just the reminder that, yeah, you can keep tweaking things, and that, yeah, your solution might look different from someone else's. Um, Now, one thing I want to just touch on briefly, and once again, it's another thing that people like to argue about, and that seems to be very individual based, is like coffee. Because I think you still have coffee, and a lot of people do fine with coffee. So do you have any I don't know, comments on that? And I guess just for a bit more context is some people seem to worry about that from like I guess like the hormonal or even the mental health side of things. And you know, you mentioned anxiety in the past. So I guess, yeah, just your thoughts on that. You know, is it very much listen to your body type thing, or is it, you know, is it something to be wary of? What do you think about that?
I think in general, when people are transitioning over to carnivore, they like want to go 0 to 100. And so if you're trying to transition to a meat based diet and quit caffeine at the same time, you're just trying it on hard mode. You might as well transition to carnivore and then try eliminating caffeine. That's what I did. So I actually completely removed caffeine from my diet at one point, when I was doing the elimination phase to
Mhm.
figure out my baseline. And when I added it back in, I didn't notice any negative effects. And
Mhm.
so personally, I'm fine with caffeine. I think everyone should do the elimination phase and include caffeine, if not in the elimination phase, once they add everything else back in, maybe cutting it out and then bringing it back in. So personally, I didn't notice any negative effects. I will say that before carnivore, if I stopped drinking caffeine, like it just wasn't available from my normal daily consumption, I would get the worst caffeine migraines. When I cut it out in carnivore, I didn't get any migraines.
Mm.
So that was like a huge benefit. Just knowing that I'm not reliant on it. It truly is just something I enjoy including in my diet, not something that I have to have in my diet. And I think that matters too. Are you addicted to it? Is it something you need to function? Or is this something that just adds that variety or that routine or whatever coffee brings or tea or whatever brings into your life? It's just balancing, whatever health outcome with the like life balance of eating the way that we do.
Totally. No, I like that a lot. And yeah, testing it, the experiment. And then another thing I try to keep in the back of my mind that I've just found interesting is just like it's about optimizing your overall experience. And if you can kind of remember that, then yeah, it's kind of goal related, but it's like, you know, I love like food and like making different things and that kind of thing. And I want to keep like that in my life if I can, like enjoying things. There's something about coffee that it's more than just caffeine for a lot of people. It's good memories, it's mornings, it's starting your day off right. It's all these things. So I mean, with the caveat of testing it out and seeing if it's a problem, I think it's important to kind of remember that like you still want to optimize your experience. If you can add something in without it being a problem, like go for it. So
Yeah, I see some people doing some really extreme things on carnivore, and if it works for them, I say go ahead. But when I see people doing extreme things and complaining or commiserating about the negative life experience it's creating for
yeah,
them, I'm like, why did you start carnivore in the first place? I
yeah,
imagine it was to improve your quality of life.
yeah,
So what are you doing?
yeah,
Please stop.
yeah. No, that's spot on. And yeah, I mean, a lot of it comes down to your goals, but it's like people still kind of ask me, they're like, oh, like how do you stick to that, or like why do you stick to that? And my kind of easy answer is, well, it's just like overall just way more benefits than negatives, so it's not hard to stick to. It's like I
Mhm.
kind of like I want to stick to it, like I like it, because if it was if it was awful, like I don't think I'd do it. Like if it was
Yeah.
if it was I mean, there's even some things we know are good for us that we have trouble sticking to, but I mean, I would say this is in a different category. It's not like it's discipline built up or something. It's like no, like it feels good to feel good, and you make that connection with what you're doing, and then it just feels right.
Yeah, absolutely.
Mhm. Well, awesome. Kind of the final thing I wanted to get into was just one thing that's kind of I've been noticing kind of in my journey, and then it's neat to see it in other people's as well, is just like the wider changes in your life kind of once you go through these transitions. So a lot of people come to it for maybe a specific health reason or something, but it's neat to see how oftentimes it ends up, whether through community or connections or healing, like leading to these other opportunities, these other possibilities. And I don't know, you start to see people kind of thriving in their own way, which is just really awesome. And it's kind of like the holistic piece that I really like. And I'm really passionate about creativity. And I think we need people to be more creativity and to lean into their own creativity and their own kind of brilliance or whatever that is. So what's your experience like that, and kind of what has changed? I mean, obviously the OCD is huge, but like what does that end up leading to?
Yeah, absolutely. I think this is the biggest piece of carnivore for me too. Like my life has changed so dramatically since I started carnivore, and some of it for the good, and some of it I'm still working through. But on the whole, like I'm just a much happier person. When I like 5 years ago, I was on a YouTube black hole and I found bikini competitors. And I was just so inspired by their hard work and dedication. And aesthetically, I like the physique. And so that always inspired me. But I always knew that the actual process of preparing for a competition would be too hard for me because of my OCD, because of my joint pain. And so it was incredible when I started experiencing all these carnivore benefits. And then I realized, like, I could actually do this. Like, something I had dreamed about for 5 years. And finally, I felt like I can pursue this. So that was such an incredible thing for me. I truly think it comes down to what you said about thriving, is like when you're spending so much of your time just trying to survive, it really opens up the opportunity for you to figure out what thriving looks like for you. And for me, that was pursuing the bikini competition. And now I get to share my passion for carnivore with other people through the coaching that I do. Honestly, it's so incredible. I wasn't expecting to enjoy it as much as I do, but like getting to talk to new carnivores and just like be like, you have no idea what's coming. Like your whole life is going to improve. Like you're going to feel good. You're going to just want to pursue all of this. And I have two clients who are 18 years old. And I'm just thinking like by the time they're 25, they're going to be like super women, just they're living life on easy mode. And for me, just getting to share that and be part of their journey is so rewarding for me. And then I would say the last piece for me is I have no training as a cook or a chef or anything, but I have found such a creative outlet in creating carnivore recipes, and the challenge of like eating something or remembering a food I liked when I had a standard American diet and figuring out how to recreate that in a way that is still conducive to my diet. And that has been so much fun for me. I've really enjoyed that.
Yeah, that's awesome. And your like your Instagram is obviously such a testament to that. There's some awesome stuff over there, and the YouTube as well. So yeah, it's neat how it kind of, like, for a lot of people it almost brings out their creative side. There's kind of this concept of creative restraints, and it's nothing to do with diet, but I feel like carnivore almost becomes that for so many people. And in a strange way, like it'll bring out their strengths, which is just a piece of the thriving. But you're an awesome example of that. And yeah, amazing to see what you're doing with that, and how you're thriving. So yeah, I think that's pretty much it. But thanks so much for chatting, for coming on. I know your story is helping a lot of people, and I hope some more people can find it through this. Yeah, I'll attach kind of your links, and you can send me anything else. But yeah, I don't know if there's anything else you want to add. You do the coaching, but yeah, any final kind of comments?
Oh, just thank you so much for having me on. This is a great conversation. And I'm really just so grateful for people like you who are helping spread the carnivore word. So thank you.
Awesome. Well, thanks so much, Jacie. We will catch up down the road maybe, but yeah, excited to see what you get up to. And thanks so much again.
Thank you. Bye.
Take care.